Bruce.
We need to start again.
Brought to you by some guys on the internet.
This is Getting Tabled.
With your hosts Jason the Bruce,
You guy!
George the Yang,
I hope you are all entertained by my inaptitude.
Jason aka Major Socks.
We've been doing this and talking about various stuff. One of the stuff.
Now sit back, relax, and get tabled.
Hello, future people, and welcome to episode 93 of Getting Tabled with your host. He needs a record button the size of his fist, the Bruce.
Yeah. I missed 3 seconds. Boo, you poor thing. And we also have with us the main man, the man that you all got upset because he wasn't here last time because he's too lazy to show up. Major Socks.
Too lazy. I was having too much fun in Disney World. With the
Exactly.
We can't hear you.
Exactly,
We can't
laziness.
hear you. What? Oh, wait, no, you can't hear us.
Yeah, you can tell I don't have my headsets. They died to that just before recording. They just died on me. So, and up in lonely no man's land, we have George. So
That's okay. Nobody cares about George.
nobody does care about George and his cat that's wandering behind him. Or
It's not my cat.
oh,
Of
the other
course,
half
of course
cat.
it's not. That's why it always
my
hangs
cat
around
lives
you.
outside. Yeah.
All right.
You know, we totally missed an opportunity to do the joke about, he can't hear anything, so one of us can't talk and the other one of us can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both did the same thing. All right.
Anyway,
Before we get into the main portion of the show, I just want to put a reminder out there. In our last episode, I announced that there is a giveaway happening for Patreon. If you was to join our Patreon for $2 a month, not only do you get access to all of our content early, but you go into the draw to win a fleet of Shaltari ships for Drop Fleet Commander, which includes the Shaltari Dreadnought, a Shaltari Starter Fleet, a Shaltari Cruisers box, and a Shaltari Frigates box. More than enough to get you into the game, more than enough to have fun. So if you join up, you gain 1 entry to the competition for every month that you support. That will be drawn in April next year. It's important to remind you that you cannot enter the competition if you live in a country where it's illegal to win a prize, because it means that I can't give it to you. This has not been sponsored. This has not been given to us to give away. This is something that I have purchased with my own money for the pure extent to try and drum up a bit of support on Patreon. So come along.
Also, Bruce, you also can't ship it to a country that is prohibited by Australian government to ship to.
True, actually, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, which I think would only
If
be
you live
Russia
in
anyway.
where those countries don't, I'm sorry, we can't help you out there.
why Shaltari? It should have been PHR. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Because
it's
Shaltari is
cool.
more fun. It's more fun.
It's probably the easier one to start in the
Anyways,
game with too.
Yeah.
So
Anyways, yeah, this is an awesome idea. So good luck to you all, Patrons, and hope you guys come out and support us if you can.
Please.
Yes, please. Anyways, news?
Newly received or noteworthy information, especially about recent or important events.
First up in the news, George is going to try and tell you that he lost a bet and that's why he's wearing the bow. But the fact of the matter is that apparently it was his idea.
no, I lost a belching contest to Casey.
For those of you not watching the video edition of our podcast, you're missing out on this glorious, glorious image. So you should join our Patreon so that you can watch the video before everybody else.
Or watch it live while it happens.
Well, that's true. That's a good point.
Patreon, yes, you can.
First things first, we have some new stuff coming out for Necromunda. So these guys are possibly the most extravagant looking minis I've seen for a while, especially the guy in the giant coat. I don't know what it is that he's trying to hold, but these 3 wheeler dealers, if it's a cat, it's the ugliest looking cat I've ever seen.
No, it's just a head.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Never mind. I actually really like these. I mean, they are all very, very different. I believe that these are individual characters that you can hire as part of their hanger-ons, basically, and so that they are supporting roles for your team. Just the 3 that's been showed off at this stage. I think the big guy in the extravagant coat's my favourite. I don't know if there's any individual differences rules-wise in these, but personally, I think Mr. Extravagance is easily the best of the 3. It's not even close to me.
I was mistaken. It looks like it's a fat lizard.
There is a cat behind his leg.
He does have a cat behind him, though.
I'd say that's more of a Malk, though. If you don't know what a Malk is, look it up. It's a creature of the Fae. I think he looks very good too. His coat is very reminiscent of like the 1960s, 1970s, Detroit pimp. Like I'll backhand you.
Either that or like 1700s France type thing.
Yeah.
I like the fact that his boots appear to be made out of the lizard that he's holding. If you look, it's the same sort of scale pattern.
Oh yeah.
The guy that has the servitor with him, I think it's the paint job that's letting that one down. I mean, there is actually quite a lot of detail there, but they just haven't really done anything with it to make it look interesting paint-wise. I don't know. That one really feels... That one feels phoned in to me, because there's just nothing to it. I mean,
see,
the hose between
though,
his face and the cloak is the only real detail apart from the wings.
But see, the other hand though too is like the way that's sculpted. I think it's painted beautifully. I mean, he's wearing rags and stuff like.
Well, it's been painted with contrast. I can tell you that.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not going to be gorgeous and flamboyant like other dude. With his over the top coat. No, he's trying to blend in. He's not.
That's fair. That's fair. And then finally, we've got the lady with the giant gun, because I hear you like guns, so I've given you guns on your gun so that you can gun while you gun.
That's Kaylee from Firefly, and she's just trying to make some side money.
Is she the engineer, Kaylee?
Yes.
Yep, I thought so. I actually do like this one. I just like the flamboyant guy is my favorite, is all. But I do like this one. Like, she's... very clearly, yes, trying to make a side hustle here. And has been painted quite nicely. Highlights in particular are really well done. Especially on the pants, because orange is pain. You got a few further details further down. Apparently it's a Gyrinx cat, so it's totally not supposed to be a Sphinx. Oh, here we go. Apparently one of them is a Psyker. One of them is a pyromancy and a technomancy. What? Oh, they're talking about other things that they do. Okay, never mind. Let us know what you think. We all seem to be agreed that Mr. Flamboyant's the best one. Do you have any other particular thoughts, Socks? I know that they're not on your wheelhouse, but nope. We'll move across to the Sunday previews then. So this is the stuff that's on pre-order for today. This weekend, rather. The Cadia Stands box set is out, ready to be pre-ordered. So this is the relaunch of the Cadian Command Squad. You're getting the Sentinel, which is the same Sentinel they released quite some time ago. You're getting some Armoured and some Scout Sentinel variations in that box. There's 2 Field Ordnance teams, which is the troops in the middle. There's a 5-man Cadian Command Squad, Cadian Shock Troops. I mean, it's a decent-looking box. I mean, I'm still going to sit here and say that I really wish they had fleshed out one of the other armies, because Lord knows Cadia is not the box that not the army that needs to be redone. There's so many other ones that are older that could have done with the time. And I'm not just talking about the one that I like here. I mean, there are a lot of different armies available out there that you could have a lot of fun with.
I think Sox needs to pick up the. I think Sox needs to pick up this box.
I mean, it does look cool.
It's the closest
You
to
know
your
what?
wheelhouse.
My wheelhouse of more modernized, I mean, more historically.
Dude, the infantry troops straight up look like the guys from Blue Squad who died on the planet in Rogue One. You got the walkers. I mean, this is as close you're gonna get to the wars in 40K there, Socks.
Yeah.
You should get it. You should get it. Yeah.
You can get it discounted. But I would actually argue that if you were going to buy this, you're probably better off to buy them individually. You don't actually save a lot of money in these boxes. You do save a little bit, but not much. Out of the whole box, the Command Squad's probably my favourite here, which is the 5 guys with the flag in the middle. Not that I don't like anything else, but...
What I want to know is what's happened to radio technology in the last 39,999 years, because that antenna is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just have to have an aerial antenna like that above your head.
Yeah, you don't need... Like, they have antennas that are literally this long, that big around, that's it, and they can communicate with satellites. That's unnecessary.
Yes, but you also got to remember that technology in 40K is supposed to be very backwards. They don't remember how things work.
Bruce, the radios we use still use technology from the Vietnam era.
Yes. But they still wouldn't know how they work.
And it's analog, not digital.
Yeah, true. We also have the Orc Goth Rocker, which I think might be my favourite Christmas mini that they've done for quite some time, honestly. This guy is just all kinds of fun. I love the fact that there's a squid that's his loudspeaker. That's just all kinds of brilliant. It appears that his microphone is actually a grenade. So this is just the essence of the orc that is so confused, but because he believes this is what it's for, it all works. I didn't even notice the scars. He's actually got quite some nice scars on his belly there too. And from Forge World, because yay, Forge World, we got some Dune Scythe Squadrons for the Necrons in your what's it called? Aeronautica Imperialis. So Michelle will be happy that there's more Aeronautica coming out. And also new White Dwarf is coming, which will give you a whole heap of free games that you really don't care about and you really don't want to play because they're all old games and they're all boring. Yep, come after me. I actually looked at the list. That's why it's not on the podcast this week, because there's nothing in there that's really of note at all. All of it is stuff that's irrelevant and sold at practically no price anyway. So, moving on. We have
Christmas bundles?
Christmas bundles. Christmas bundles are finally here. I decided I'd start with the 40k one because that's how things had been so far. So we've got a Sisters of Battle box, the Sanctorum Guard. There's also an Adeptus Custodes box, which probably is the better one out of them, I think. At least for me, that's probably the one that I prefer.
That's super tempting.
Adeptus Mechanicus, there is a box for those as well. There's also an Imperial Knights box, which is actually a genuine good one to get into the game if that's what you want to play with. There is a Death Guard one, which I kind of feel like this is similar to one we got a couple of years ago. I could be wrong on that. The Court of the Crimson King is definitely one that we've seen before. The Imperial Force Bastion Strike. Yes?
I'm going to disagree on those two because they do have Mortarion and Magnus, which those are not typically part of the boxes. Those are typically like the separate ones. Like,
it's possible.
So like the Death Lord one, I think that's missing a tank and like the little weird hover thingy is what that army box was.
Possible. So. The Imperial Fist Bastion Strike Force, I think, is the most boring out of all of them, actually. Like, there's just nothing really exciting there. Well, not for me, anyway. The Raven Guard one I don't mind, which is 2 of your little walker guys and some general troops. Like, none of these are armies in a box, but they are, generally speaking, fairly good value for money. Historically, this is really the only time that you actually do get decent discounts on their stuff. And what am I saying by that? What? Every month an army comes out with a new box that's discounted. No, it's not really discounted. Everything else has risen in price to make that bundle look better value. It's perceived value, which is not the same thing.
I will argue and say the Watchers of the Gate, the Custodes box. I will argue that is an army in a box. Just
actually, that is
high point value.
Yeah, they are very high. Yeah.
Yeah, the high point value of those Custodes, that right there, that's probably easily close to 1,000, 1,200 points at least.
If you buy them, you have to paint them in red and blue because you have to paint them up to be Superman because that's the law of Henry Cavill.
No.
Even though he paints his to be gold. I actually kind of want to see somebody do that.
So, actually, I have something to kind of dive into on that when we get to hobby, but we'll save that for hobby.
Okay. Socks. Yep.
Well, I was going to say, I'm disappointed that they didn't do a Votan one since, they just so recently did Votan, and that's what people are going to scramble for. So, I mean, they could, do a box for that.
Given that they've already upset everybody that bought that initial box set, I don't think that would have been a very clever PR move.
You got a fair point there, yeah.
They also generally don't tend to do a big discount on the brand new stuff. Like, we didn't get a Sororitas box last year that I can recall. I know that this is not your wheelhouse socks, but is there any of them that, just aesthetically jump out at you more than the others?
1,000 Suns, Court of the Crimson King. I just like the paint job on that center guy there with his wings.
Yeah.
How they're red and then blend into the black and with the blue highlighted edges.
But he did everything wrong, so...
He did nothing wrong.
He did everything wrong.
Of all of the brothers currently available for 40k, I think that's my favourite mini out of all of them, and quite significantly.
I
don't mind Mortarion, but I think he's a better mini.
I'm gonna have to agree that Magnus is the better mini, just because you don't have to be as highly skilled to make him look really good. Mortarion, you kind of need some chops to really give that model some credit.
Moving on, there is obviously, like every year, there is an Age of Sigmar equivalent as well. Again, decent looking options this year. Starting with the Sisters of Cain, or the Canaanite Slaughter Coven, because you can't have one of these without it calling it something complicated. All of these models are old, but they still hold up. These models are actually quite nice. I
wouldn't say they're old. I mean, they're within the last 5 years.
I think the newest thing in that box is the Harpies from memory, which is at least 2 years ago. Everything else here the Snake Girls at the front, they would be the newest one. Everything else, I'm pretty sure, are old stuff. I could be wrong. That doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. They are still... This is an example of a box set that proves that not everything has to be redone.
For sure.
The Shrine, or the Cauldron of Blood, rather, there in the middle, is 8 years old, 9 years old now, and that still looks just as good as a lot of things they have on the market, I think. The Auric War Clans, so this is the new orcs that we saw earlier this year. Wait, earlier this year? Late last year? I don't know.
Something like that.
This is a smaller box, but we've got a couple of very big monsters in this. Just purely based on the two monsters alone, this box is insane value. Comparing it with the price that they have on the shelf, at least. Goomspike Glitz gets you can't not love these guys. Everything about the Goomspike Glitz is awesome. I keep on calling them Glitz for some reason. Maybe I need to buy them and paint them all sparkly because I can't say the word properly.
Agreed.
Ooh.
We also have the Verminous Host, which is the Skaven. So basically, they took the current Skaven set and they took the old starter collecting set and they smashed the boxes together because quite literally that's what's in this box. It's 2 starters thrown together. It's not a bad way to do it, but there's not really much in there that they've done otherwise. Good value, though. Like, there's a lot of minis in that.
The problem with the Skaven is you need like 4 of those boxes to have 1,000 points.
Depends on how you play them, not necessarily. In saying that, I need to have
it's a gross exaggeration, but Skaven, you need to have a lot of Skaven to have a Skaven army.
Yeah. Again, it depends on how you play them, though. I need to have a bit of a closer look at my Skaven force and see how many points I actually have. But in the old version, I had like 1,500 points very, very easily, and it was only like 80 troops. Because you can take those bigger Stormfiend guys in the back as troops. Instead
really? Okay.
of the whole. It depended on how you played them. It wasn't the most powerful way to play them, but it was definitely a way that you could. We've lost
Socks.
I'm here. My camera just turned.
I think we're losing Socks' internet's going, I think.
Shows him is connected, but his cameras.
I could still hear you. I think my camera was going in and out again.
So your headset dies. Now your camera's dying. Are you sure your computer's all right?
Yeah.
All right. So moving on. The Night Haunt is another one that's here. So this is all of your ghost guys. This is an army that I almost brought when they first came out, honestly, because I love everything to do with this aesthetic.
I've got some sitting up in there that I need to do something with still.
I didn't even know that you had them.
My pile of shame is quite significant.
It's not as bad as mine. Although you have stuff that you would have bought a long time ago as well, I suppose. And then we also have the Revenant Wargrove, which is your wood elves, basically. Again, most of this stuff is older, but they're all still really, really gorgeous.
I'm sorry, the Sylvanas stuff, like
Yeah.
like in 10 years, I think it'll still look good. Like the big guys in the back there, I don't see how you can improve on those sculpts.
No, I agree. Another example of a force that, I mean, there is newer stuff in here, but a force that not everything has to be redone.
Yeah.
And then, because of course there is a Stormcast box, but in saying that, this is a really nice looking Stormcast box. So this is all of the newer releases, basically, more or less, including the dragons, which are dragons that we did like when they were being released. They are very pretty dragons, although they're actually, are they dragons? Yes. No, well, there's a dragon and there's a wyvern, from memory. Although they call them dragons, but one of them only has. Yes, wyvern only has 2 legs and wings, not 4 legs and wings. And so again, personally, I actually struggle to pick a favorite on this. I think it might be, I don't know,
the Sylvaneth. Like, I've always wanted to do a Sylvaneth army, and just that right there, it's like two more boxes, like the bigger sword guys and the bigger archer guys, and that would fill that out. You've got the dryads, you've got the guys that are like separating out. You got 2 of the big tree folk guys, and you got the big general there. Like that's a good little. Just add those 2 boxes, and you've got a good little army there, in my opinion.
If I didn't already own the Skaven, it probably would be them, because Skaven, but I literally own everything in that box, so it doesn't have as much desire for me. So I probably fall back to the gremlins, the Goom Spike Gits, just because
the Squigalanch.
Yeah, the Squigalanch. Like, Squigs are just so much fun, It's a giant mouth filled with teeth that runs at you. Socks, whether aesthetically or otherwise.
Stormcast.
Stormcast? Yep.
Yep. Primarily, because if I were to ever get into Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, it would definitely be something elvish. I know Stormcast.
Human,
Then
yeah.
the new elves.
But I know what you mean.
So I just have been intrigued with elven armies, but never will get into it. So
I love the fact that you want to buy them because they're elf, except they're not elves.
yeah.
Yeah, if you do get into the Warhammer universe, I highly recommend Sigmar over 40k. I think you would have way more fun with that just based off of how Sigmar plays versus 40k.
Something I've wanted to do on the podcast for a while is for us to do a little bit of a challenge between each other where we all buy the same box set and we set like X amount of hours to paint it up however we want and then present it on a show of like this is, and then like the audience kind of goes, well, I like this one, I like that one. I would still like to do that at some point. And I have a feeling that if we were to do it, it would probably end up having to go in the Stormcast direction for all three of us to be able to do something that was of interest to us.
I'd be okay with that. I could add to my army.
I wouldn't because I don't have them, but I could convert them up to be something else maybe. But I think the idea would be to paint them up as what they're supposed to be. But yeah, there is always other stuff coming for Games Workshop. Like I said, there is a whole heap of free games coming with the most recent edition of White Dwarf. Personally, none of them interest me, which is why I decided not to discuss it because I didn't really think it was that exciting. But if you go onto the Warhammer community website, you can have a look to see if there's stuff coming in it. Generally speaking, unless there's something like, if you're getting the magazine already, yay, I wouldn't be buying it for that though. There's not really as much value in there as you feel like there is. Moving on. Socks. I hear that you like playing with Star Wars games. You might have been slightly interested in some news that we saw this week.
So yeah, Atomic Mass Games, who owns Star Wars Legion, Armada, and X-Wing, as well as Marvel Crisis Protocol, sent out a preview of what's coming out summer 2023, and it is Star Wars Shatterpoint, which is pretty much their version of Star Wars that's similar to MCP. So you're going to have the same kind of concept as MCP, where you're going to have smaller squads of primarily heroes. The video shows some stormtroopers in the back, so you may have some guys that aren't like Captain Rex or some of the other commanders that you see in the movies or the Clone Wars shows and stuff like that as
I was going to say, I just saw some battle droids.
Yes.
Battle droids.
Yeah, battle droid, yeah.
Battle droids. And so it's taking it to a very, very, very small scale Legion. It's going to be the same scale in terms of number of miniatures that you're going to have. It's going to be the same scale as MCP in terms of the size of the miniatures themselves. So bigger scaled models than what you have for Star Wars Legion right now.
Yep.
Adepticon is going to be where it's going to be previewed mostly right now. They did say they're looking for playtesters right now as well. I'm sitting on the fence, and there's a lot of people in the Legion community right now that are just like, okay, did they just kill Legion, or is Legion still going to be around? I think
no,
Legion's
I don't think they're killing Legion. No, I don't think. I think they're expanding.
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be interest in this. Legion's going to dip off hard for four
That's
to
too
6
big a
months,
risk.
and then peter back, in another 6 months, and kind of stay at that level. Then probably for almost, I would say, at least 8 months, and then be back to where it was. As people like, I don't like this, I'm going back to Legion. Or you're going to have the few that's going to be like, I don't like Legion, I like this more. And then you're going to have the people that this is going to entice, and they're going to be like, oh, Legion looks better now, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think, like, the only risk of Legion going away would be as if people stop buying Legion, which clearly is not happening at this stage.
And I agree, and they've got a lot of stuff that they've already announced. They've got Ewoks that they have announced. They've announced a whole bunch of stuff that's still waiting to come out over the next year or so. And so, I don't think Legion's going away myself, but I know there's some people in the community on the Facebook pages and stuff like that. And like when they first saw this, it's just like, what do I do now? I think George, you're absolutely right. People are going to be in that. Okay, do I dip into this for a little bit, see how this is?
Well,
and
we can go back a few years ago. A little game called Drop Fleet Commander came out.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Drop Zone when that happened?
It initially died, and then it just rebuilt again.
What was Drop Zone? Yeah, no one cared about Drop Zone anymore. So I mean, Drop Zone's back now. I'd say it's back a little stronger now because you have the people who were interested in Drop Fleet, because Drop Fleet was like the calling card of like the spaceship battle, like Battle for Gothic did, and brought people in. They're like, oh, there's this other game too, and that But yeah, I
campaign off of it locally. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There's also more releases coming for it too, which I think Drop Zone might actually be getting more attention from its community because there's been more releases for it. So that either means one of two things: either they are getting more sales for it and therefore trying to get those sales to continue, or they weren't getting those sales and this is supposed to be drumming up business. It's one or the other. I don't know which. I could ask, but I don't think I'd get an answer on that.
I think you're right on the second one. I think it's the sales that didn't happen when Drop Fleet came out, when Drop Fleet was the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what happened there. So, and I think the same thing's going to happen here with Shatterpoint.
Well, it happens with everything.
No, for sure.
Yeah. How do we know that this is the same scale, miniatures-wise, as MCP? Quite honestly, and this is me that pointed this out, I'm not saying I'm the only one that has said this, but you can see for a fact that this is in the 40mm scale because the bases are designed exactly the same way that the MCP ones are. The decoration on top of them is different, but the design of the bases is exactly the same. Therefore, you know for a fact that this is definitely 40mm scale. We don't have any pictures of them side by side at this stage, obviously, but
I'll point something out that makes it a little more obvious as well. If you go to about the 18-second mark where you got Rex, and he's got his little antenna deal there, that antenna deal is pretty thin for a 28mm.
True, that is true.
So that's something that you would.
I don't even think it's on the model for him. I don't think he has the model, the little antenna piece that's sticking up on 28mm because
it would break off if you looked at it.
Yep.
Exactly.
So this was
one thing that I do.
Yep.
I'm concerned about is with them announcing this. Yes, I know back in one of their first mini extravaganzas, they said they didn't have anything planned out for Armada, but where's Armada? You guys have had a year and a half, 2 years almost now. Where's Armada?
What did I say when they initially said that? I told you that if they wasn't going to do anything in this year, that game was in trouble.
Yep.
I'm going to just say this now. I think Armada is dead. I think whether they want to acknowledge it or not, and I think there's a reason that they're not acknowledging it. I mean, I don't know as far as how often the question's being asked. I know it was being asked a lot initially. But honestly, I think they're just not saying it, but that the game is gone. That is my opinion. I hope that I'm wrong on that. I honestly do. But I feel that if they were going to change their stance on that it would have happened at Mini Extravaganza. And I think the community is right to be upset. It was not a small amount of voices. It was not. It's not like it was two people amongst the crowd that was going, hey, I want Armada. Like, there was a very large crowd of people that were upset for that initially.
Especially since we are, 4 months away from the Adepticon?
Yeah.
They could be putting some sneak peeks out, possibly like Shatterpoint, of what they're going to preview at Adepticon. Nothing's come out yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be that person and be a bit of a jerk here. Also, if you go to about the 28-second mark, where you got that really nice looking General Grievous with his flowing cape and the really good paint job, This is your demo video. This is showing stuff off. Get some straight lightsabers.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Is this the quality we can expect when we buy this? Is
these are
curved and bent?
These are all prototypes, though. That's not actually that unusual.
I don't care if you're going to be like showing this off as like, check this new game out. Have your stuff looking good.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's actually a problem that we have a lot with the lightsabers in Legion itself.
Well, they use poor quality plastics in Legion. That's why.
So I can tell you, like Legion, you're talking 28 mil scale. I can kind of, it's a little tiny stuff. If this is going to be on that 40 mil scale, which based on some of the detail you're saying, based on what we can surmise from the bases, if this is on that larger scale, straight lightsabers, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I didn't even notice it till you pointed it out, but I can't not see it now.
You're welcome.
We don't know a lot about this yet. I mean, there is details in the actual theme, but the initial response to this was that, they're doing MCP but for Star Wars. However, Atomic Mass Games have already come forward and said that that's not what this is, that it is a game system of its own. The wording that they used, I don't know the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, I guess there would be a couple of comparisons because they're both miniature games in a skirmish size, but they were very, very adamant that this is not just MCP but for Star Wars. It's going to be interesting to see how true that is. I have no reason to suspect otherwise. But it's going to be interesting to see what they actually do. I mean, this is the information that they're giving is very, very vague at this stage, which if you think back a couple of years when the Marvel one was announced, they didn't really give any extra information there at that point either. It was just, this is coming. The difference was that got announced when the demos were, just before the demos were happening. So it all kind of ramped very quickly, where they seem to be taking their time with this one. Which I guess is to give them more time to make sure that everything's ready and that they don't have Well, the problem with MCP when it first came out is that the quality of the minis was very chalk and cheese. Like, there were some that were absolutely phenomenal, and there's others like Captain America that the detail was so soft that you could almost not paint it. So far in this, the detail in these minis appear to be very good. Though, apparently they don't have straight lightsabers. Also on that front, we have a new tank coming for Marvel Crisis Protocol, and it's amazing.
It's not a Cobra Hiss?
No, it's definitely not a Cobra Hiss. This is the Cobra tank. So it's got Red Skull in it. I don't know if that means that you can't have Red Skull
in the
elsewhere.
Game hero.
I would kind of hope that it's optional to have him up the top there. I don't know. I mean, they very clearly have designed it that way. But I'd kind of like to be able to have Red Skull as an actual mini as well. So it just depends on how they do it, I suppose. I would hope, because it's a Hydra tank terrain and ultimate encounter. So this is much like the Thanos thing that came out last year.
So if it's an ultimate encounter, it's a Red Skull encounter where you got to take him out.
Where he is an ultimate boss, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's
all
true.
it is, then.
I answered my own question. Otherwise, it's a terrain piece, and if you're using it as
Bruce.
So yeah, if you're using it as a terrain piece, I probably wouldn't put Red Skull in there, unless you paint it up so that it's a statue, I guess. But if you were going to do this, I would paint it up for one thing and then just maybe magnetize. Well, it depends. I mean, I guess if you're the sort of person that doesn't really, you look at it and it doesn't worry you that Red Skull is there and on the team, because in theory, Red Skull could be in both armies on the table anyway, so depends on how you look at things. But now we're going to move on to something very, very different.
Extremely.
Yes. So, Bad Squiddo Games are a company that's been around for a while. I haven't had a reason to talk about them much. So, they have done a series of miniatures that they are calling Naval Gents in Panto Dress. This is actually based on something that happened in history, which I find absolutely hilarious. So these guys were preparing for a Christmas show. They were rehearsing for a pantomime show when they got attacked by in World War II, and therefore there's all these images from history of them in battle in the dresses. Somebody has actually recreated this in miniature form. It's absolutely phenomenal. The thing I like about it is the minis actually lean into the silliness of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, in these pictures, they are very clearly having a lot of fun here. I kind of like the overly dramaticness of some of it. Like, this is the guy at the back going, oh, just like you would see in a pantomime show. I really, really like these. This is so much fun. I mean, I don't really know how I would ever use them in a game. I mean, I don't play historical games, really. But the fact that somebody has done this is so much fun. I could see people having a lot of fun with these painting-wise and just going absolutely nuts with them. I mean, there's only 3 of them, so you couldn't exactly army build with them. I mean, I guess you could, but it would look very boring after a while.
I don't know if you had like a MASH game, you could finally have an accurate mini for Klinger.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's a brilliant idea.
What did I say before the show? A ringer for Klinger, but with a better mustache. Lyrics from a Bloodhound Gang song where they're talking about Klinger.
I hadn't actually realized that's what you meant at the time when you said it. I really love that idea. That's brilliant. As much as I might get hate for this, I'm not a fan of that show at all. I don't like MASH. I've never enjoyed it. I don't think it's funny.
With that being said, next week's episode will only have myself and Major Socks in it.
Oh, you're having a next week's episode, are you? You're going to go weekly now. That's nice. I won't be here anyway.
No, we'll still be bi-weekly, just without you. Because you can't not like MASH.
I can not like MASH. I prefer other comedies. It's just...
No.
Yeah.
It's forbidden.
And on top of it, they're only £12. Like, that's actually a fairly decent price, really. I mean, these are limited edition things by the look of it. They are sculpted by Alan Marsh, which is a name that I have actually come across before. He is a very good sculptor, actually. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how long these are around. These are just so much fun. Speaking of Drop Zone Commander.
Resin buildings.
Yep. So, there's a couple of Drop Zone Commander things this week. You can buy these buildings in a bundle or individually. I've just brought up the bundle just so that we can have a look at everything. So these resin buildings are using the new technology, and I say in quotation marks because... So basically they are recycling failed casts to help fill the void in resin so that it makes larger models a lot cheaper. These are resin buildings. The entire bundle is £120. That's a lot of resin.
That's a lot
for
of
a very little amount of money. So the fact that this is happening, like this is a proven concept with the resin now. Like the recycled resin is what we suspected would be a smart idea. I believe this is proving it. This is a product that wouldn't exist because it would be too expensive without that.
Oh, yeah.
So I love everything about this. The detail on these is absolutely phenomenal. We did actually get teasers of these a couple of weeks ago. We did actually kind of slightly hint. I don't remember if we talked about it in detail or if we just hinted at it. I think we just hinted at it. But these buildings are absolutely phenomenal. Like, this is just really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of briefly look, they're in the background there for the Kickstarter for the paint. So I do like some of the details. Some of it seems very Eastern Bloc, some of it seems very Art Deco, some of it, just your run-of-the-mill office building.
I think my favorite is the red and green one, personally.
The long one?
Yeah.
The long rectangular one?
Yeah, I was gonna say the two in the middle of the all-in picture, like the two in the middle there, they have that very Eastern Bloc look.
Yeah.
I think.
I think they all look very Eastern Bloc, honestly. They just
No,
like,
if you look at the two on the bottom right with the cornice decorations and stuff like that, that's very like Art Deco-y.
Mm.
What's the where like everything's like focal point lighting, Airship of Tomorrow, or whatever, like that kind of.
Yeah, it's very pretty. I really like what they're doing with this, and like they're designs that kind of feel like they're timeless enough where you could still see them existing in the future. I mean, because these are very clearly older buildings.
Yeah,
but they don't feel out of place. I guess the only question we have at this point is how they will arrive. I assume that they are arriving in one piece, but I don't actually know. Do they?
I would hope to God.
Say?
I would hope to God they're flat packed and you put them together.
They're heavy enough to stay put when moving miniatures around them. Supplied unpainted will require cleaning and could require you to fill some holes. It doesn't say that you have to build them.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Nope.
Holy
buy an
smokes!
entire set, you're gonna have a big box.
That's gonna be a
Keeping
big
in mind,
box.
these are 10 mil scale too, though. So they're only going to be like, yay big. Like they're not going to be huge.
That's still gonna be bigger than the flat pack of the terrain sets we got though.
True.
Well, I don't know,
They're
maybe
probably
not.
bubble wrapped or something. Some padding around going to be each one, and so you add the padding around each of those buildings. And it's going to be a good sized box still.
Zox has got a point there too.
I wonder if the
Yeah,
other
because
They're not
listing...
going to ship these without some sort of a padding, or else you're going to be having customer complaints coming back saying, "Hey, I got chips and larger chunks broken off from shipping."
Normally, if you have to build these things, it would say unpainted and unbuilt, or unbuilt and unpainted. That's the only reason I'm saying it appears that these are all in one piece, because it doesn't state otherwise.
Agreed.
Louis, if we're wrong on that, you might want to get somebody to update the website, because it appears that these are all in one piece. So that's why I'm making the assumption. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But it appears that these are all one piece. Generally speaking, with Drop Zone, you have no reason to go inside of a building. When you're inside the building, the models are placed on top. So there would be very little reason to have these as separate pieces, except for the fact that it would help with shipping. And maybe in the case of, because a lot of these buildings are like, you have detail on the bottom and then a different detail on top. You could maybe swap and change them to make them look different. So maybe you could have them in like 2 pieces or 3 pieces or something, which would help break it down a little bit. But I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how these things actually arrive. Like this is just, as far as bargains is concerned, this is insane value. If you do purchase them separately, you are looking at anywhere between, I think it's 22 to 30 pounds. So 20, 25, 20, 20, 22, 22, 30. Yeah, so it's between 20 and 30 pounds each. So even if you were to buy them separately, it's still very, very, very good value.
With the exchange rate for the pound to the dollar right now, it's about $142.
If you are playing Drop Zone Commander and you want some more terrain, or you're tired of the terrain that you have, this is a no-brainer. Spray paint it and dry brush it.
Yeah, this goes back to our discussion with Mel of, shop terrain versus home terrain. This is definitely the kind of terrain where, if you have the space at home where you can play games at home, this is the kind of terrain you want to have, because it'll just make your game look that much better. Shop terrain, I don't know. I mean...
No, yeah, it's a bit much for shop terrain. It wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
Moving on. The amount of times that we have been asked about the Leviathan heavy hovercraft is ridiculous. Every time it kind of felt at one stage that every time we spoke about Drop Zone Commander, when we were going through those rules all the time, that somebody had been trying to buy this and couldn't find it. Why was it out of stock? Well, your prayers have finally been answered. There were reasons, like we actually did officially ask about this, and there were reasons why you couldn't get this for a while. But it was coming and it was coming and it was coming. There was kind of things they had to work through, but it's finally here. You can pre-order it for November 25th. The Leviathan Heavy Hover Carrier is finally back. This is something that the Resisti players have been screaming for a good, at least year and a half.
I love that you called it the Resisti.
I did it for you. And genuinely, in my opinion, still one of the best looking minis in the game.
It's massive. I've played against one before. It is a good 6-7 inches squared. I mean,
This is one of the reasons
huge.
why I was always... Yeah, this thing is
big.
huge. It's called a Leviathan. This is one of the reasons why I was always tempted to play the Resistance in the game. Because it's just so pretty. One thing I also noticed, there's different build options in this, because of course there is.
There is.
But one of those options has Scourge guns on it.
Yes, it does. You can build it with the plasma cannon.
Really fun. All right. I just thought it was worth touching on those two because I know for a fact that we have been asked about that specifically multiple times. It was a very frequently asked question that unfortunately we couldn't answer for a long time because it wasn't available and it just simply wasn't. Look, it's coming. All I can tell you is that it's coming. There wasn't really much more I could say because we didn't have dates. It was one of those things that was, they know that people want it, but they can't do anything about it right now. It's kind of like they had issues with the mold, basically. The mold had to be kind of redone, and when they redid it to release, it got delayed again because the mold failed. I'm oversimplifying that, so please keep in mind, I'm deliberately oversimplifying that. Louis, I know that there's more to this story than that, but I'm just trying to be brief. And speaking of brief, we're going to move on. Hassle-Free Minis is another company that we haven't spoken about a lot of, but they have been around for a very long time. When it comes to third-party indies, we need to go through these guys at some point. They have a lot of really good things. So, they are on Kickstarter at the moment for the second time, and the first time since 2015. They are doing a whole heap of sci-fi minis. And, oh my goodness, are these things pretty. So, for those that don't follow Hassle-Free Minis, this is one of the sculptors that when he's sculpting things, he will sculpt a naked body first, and then he will put clothing over the top of that so that everything is in proportion. He does it deliberately, and at this point, has to censor things on Facebook all the time because otherwise they get stricken. Because it doesn't matter.
Naughty bits.
Oh, yeah, he does it with naughty bits and everything. He does all detail.
I was just saying he's getting censored because of naughty bits.
Oh, yes. I like the fact that there's an Amanda Carter because Stargate. I mean, it doesn't look much like Samantha Carter, but I like the fact that they're doing... That's clearly where the name comes from.
Can we first of all address that he's using the Star Trek original series font?
Oh, I didn't even notice that. That's a very good call.
The first line of it, to boldly go.
I just didn't...
Like, it even looks...
I didn't notice what the font was because I was looking at the minis. That's actually a really good call. Well done. So we have...
This is me judging you.
This is me not caring about your judgment. I'm sorry if, as a miniature podcast, I was trying to concentrate on the minis and not the font that the banner was made from. Eowyn Greybeard Reacher. It's really pretty. All of these are metal minis, just for the record. You can get resin masters for slightly more expensive. So it's £8 versus £15. I think that's across the board. I already mentioned Amanda Carter, and that name is Amanda Tapping, combined with Samantha Carter, hence why I'm saying Stargate. Rex Hammer Ellison clearly looks like a very intelligent man with his big stoic face and watermelon-sized head. Don't insult him because you'll probably crush your head. Oh, they're not all the same price. Oh, never mind. Ignore my comment earlier.
The price difference, I think it's the same though. Like the difference.
Yeah, the resins are all the same. Yeah, Harlan Prof Croxius, so he's clearly a professor of some kind. Lyris Ember Danvers. Danvers, I suspect, comes from Captain Marvel, but I could be wrong on that.
If you scroll on down a little further, there's a character who looks like Captain Marvel from the movie.
Oh, I hadn't gotten to that point yet. There's the Countess Elizabeth de Vere, that I quite like that one. Marlena Nessie Ness, which is another one that I really like. I like most of these, actually. I definitely have a favourite, and I will say what that is in a moment. Silver's quite fun. I quite like Silver.
Looks like Captain Marvel from the movie.
I guess I could see that.
Well, except it's pigtails instead of mohawk. Now,
yeah,
it's pretty close. Okay.
Yeah. Adamant Anthony, which is a guy in a suit with a giant space gun. And then we have the best boy. He is a good boy, but he's a good boy with a giant gun. So don't tell him that he's not a good boy. That is my favorite. Looks like he's got
a rocket launcher too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He does.
Gabriel Ibanez is quite fun. I don't know why that's not being shown in the same green that everything else is. I find that rather odd, honestly. But
obviously, a Starship Troopers reference. Yes,
true. Recluse is like, I mean, it kind of feels it kind of feels Predator-ish, yeah. So that's a stretch goal. We've had a few other Silver that we spoke about earlier was originally a stretch goal as well. I really, really Major John Hall is fun. That's been unlocked since I was looking at this last night. I really, really love this stuff. Genuinely tempted by this.
And then there's Dex Logan, who's not a Mandalorian.
Nope, definitely not. Definitely not a Mandalorian. Why would you even suggest such a thing? Yeah. So, House of Free minis make a lot of alternate minis, some of which look like certain things, some of which don't. But yeah, definitely worth having a look at. Supreme Obidin is definitely not the bad guy from Thor Ragnarok. It definitely isn't him.
Did you see the Samuel L. Jackson? It has to be Samuel L. Jackson.
What's the character name?
Mystic Kenya.
I don't think I've seen that one yet. Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, it's Samuel L. Jackson. I like the fact that they've given him a real sword instead of a sci-fi sword. Because that one you could paint up either way. Like, you could make that fantasy if you wanted to. You'd probably need to green stuff the belt a little bit if you wanted to make it fantasy, but otherwise, there's no reason why you couldn't just make that fantasy. Rather than Star Wars if you wanted.
Scroll down a little more.
The Fat Emperor.
Darfed Sidious.
That is brilliant.
Not dark, Darfed.
Feels
that's for your Spaceballs game.
Or June. It feels very June. Dr. Elvin Hill is the next unlock that hasn't been done yet. Like I said, I really like this one. So you got a couple of different levels here. Like, you can start with just an away team and you can choose 6 of the minis. There's a full crew, which is 12. And then you go so on and so forth. There is the full crew, which is any 12. So you've got pledges here for metal or for resin, depending on what you prefer. I'm notoriously not a huge fan of metal minis. I know I'm in the minority there. Any preferences between you guys with favorites? I already said what mine was.
I really don't have a particular favorite of those. I mean, there's so many of these companies out there doing the alternate. It's not this, it's this, but it looks like. I mean, it's cool, it's fun.
Yeah,
I can see where there's the market in it, but it's just like.
I will say this: hassle free. If you come across this video, I have been wanting to buy your Definitely Not a Stargate crew for at least 4 years now, and they're never in stock when I look at them. Can you please put them in stock for me? I want to buy them. But it's got nothing to do with this, though. And was it Dex that you said, Socks?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Moving on.
You want to make sure I was going to say, you're going to want to make sure that you have these ladies as your friends.
Yep. These are the Golden Gun Girls, which is just, I love this. So we definitely don't have the Golden Girls here with giant guns and really evil looks on their faces. I love this so much.
One of them's got a revolver. The other one's got the what's the British infantry rifle there? Socks.
Sten or
where the mag is up in the buttstock. That's what looks like Betty White has. B. Arthur has a Tommy gun.
Yeah. Of anybody, I kind of feel like it's appropriate for B. Arthur to have the Tommy gun.
And then whatever the mother was, it looks like she's got like a breaching shotgun.
Mm. It's so much fun. I don't think these are specifically for a game, but the first thing that came to mind for me was that Regime Rumble, where it was like all of the political characters fighting against each other for no reason.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd really care. Like, this is so fun. I don't care what game it's for. I just kind of want people to bring them to a table and have fun with them. Have an evil Betty White chasing people through the camp to kill them. Like, do it and don't look back. I don't care what you use them for. These are amazing.
These would even be great in like a what's the Warhammer game?
Kill team?
The squad. Yeah. Have these as a kill team.
That'd be. Oh, I love that so much. I'm genuinely tempted by these. Except I've already done an order from Black Site Studios recently.
Holy smokes, I just looked at the price.
$31. I know, it's not that bad value.
Oh, wait, hold on a second. My VPN was still on.
How much did you think they were? Oh, hang on. I'm looking at an Australian dollar amount. What are they for you?
It was showing $160. There we go. 31.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I had a VPN connected still, so showing in that country's currency.
The power of friendship is the banner that they use on the front of the website. It's just so good. Ill-Gotten Games have been around for a while. They are on Kickstarter at the moment with a fully 3D printable war game. So we finally got another one of these. These are starting to become more and more popular. Well, I don't know if popular is the right word. More and more common is what I should be saying. So it kind of feels, it's very sci-fi. So we've got mechs and we've got characters, and it's very skirmish size in the way that it's going. Feels very post-apocalyptical.
Looks like Pigface from Star Wars.
Yes, actually. Yeah, that's a good call. My first thought was the bad guys from Duke Nukem. Mainly because of the terrain set. I actually quite like that terrain set, honestly. I kind of want somebody to do a Duke Nukem board game. As much as I know that franchise is dead, I kind of want somebody to do it. I don't know. I like the look of this. I mean, it's a simple looking concept. I mean, obviously it's very early at this stage. It is already funded though. Like this was a very small goal. It was only $1,000 goal. It's fully 3D printable, so you don't actually need to buy any minis. It's all fairly cheap, honestly. Yeah. But the sculpts look good. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes rules wise. I actually think the terrain is probably my favorite part of this.
I see this becoming more and more of a thing.
Well, with the postage crisis out there at the moment, there are people that are going. It's not. There's a card game that I looked at last year that didn't fund successfully that was coming back to Kickstarter, and they've come back at the moment with a print and play version because with the way that the shipping crisis is at the moment, they just didn't trust that they'd be able to get it out at a point where they didn't lose money.
Yeah.
Which is a problem with the indie scene at the moment. Which again is, who should be on Kickstarter? Sorry, just a bit of a cough there. Like I said, I really like this. I'm very, very tempted to try and get these roads, actually, for the secret project. I think they might slightly be out of scale for what I'm doing, but I really like these roads.
I think they might be a lot closer than you think, Bruce.
I do have some roads, but I'd like to have some. They're 15mm scale, so. Oh, wait, hang on. Oh, no, that's scaled down to. Okay. Never mind, they're 30-ish mil, so no, the scale would be right, yeah. I misread that the first time I was looking at this. So yeah, like I said, I really like the look of this. It's kind of simple, but not. I don't mean simple in a bad way. Like I said, I'm tempted to just try to get the roads personally, because those roads are perfect for secret project. Like,
so Casey the Golden Girls were so cool. I had to send those to Casey.
Mm-hmm.
She replied back of those would make great Monopoly pieces.
I would almost play Monopoly just for that. Why do I say almost? It's a horrible game. That's why I say almost.
I was gonna, especially if you include attack rolls. I'm going to use my Tommy gun on your hotel.
Have to pay maintenance costs. All right, that's it for the news for now. Shall we discuss an indie?
Indie. Definition. Independent. Type. Slang word. Jargon.
Arena Rex is a game that has been around for a while. This was kickstarted during the early days of Kickstarter. This is one of the original success stories. And something that kept on coming up when Brother Bear and I both appeared on somebody else's podcast at one point a few months ago. Gaming with the Guys. It's one of the other Bushido crews. And this is another one of the games that they're big fans of. So, just for context, I have been tempted to buy minis from these guys for about 7 years now.
What scale are these?
I want to say 50 mil? No, 35 mil.
Okay. Because I'm looking at Landon with riding the Kato. Holy cow, that looks good.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I will show you another one that I really like. At the bottom of that, if you open up that and just have a look at Landon. So basically, this is a game. And this is a game that's Gladitorial Combat.
Gladiators.
Yeah. So that's the context just for the record. And yes, Landon is absolutely fantastic. You will also notice that you can also play these guys as just the creatures, because in theory, because it's Gladitorial Combat, you have like monsters and stuff that will appear that you can fight as well as tamed versions of them. But at the bottom of that page, there is Sarakrit riding Zara.
That does look cool. But Nero riding Septimus.
Yeah, he was coming up as well. I've seen the Scorpion in real life. It looks amazing. One of my friends that kickstarted this had this mini and painted it up to look like a real Scorpion and did a really good job. JB, I hate you. Also, JB, I'd love to play this game at some point. Yes, let's open up Nero. So factions...
Like that pose has so much action happening in it.
Yeah. Factions in this game are divided up kind of how you would expect them to be. I mean, there's very much like your Roman factions and how you would expect. There's also an Egyptian faction. There's also a Greek faction. We also now have like a Viking type faction. If you go to the store drop-down menu, so if we just start at the top and have a look at Helsinki, you'll start to get an idea of how these things... So Helsinki is your Greek faction, basically. Everybody has a starter set, which is 3 minis, and then obviously everything else is added on top of that. And I'm just going to kind of browse through the starter sets for the moment, just because otherwise we could be here forever. These guys kind of like, they release a couple of things every so often. Like, this is not a game that's flooding the market with new products all the time. It's drip fed out. Everything is kind of released. The balancing on this is, rather than having a points system, you have a cards system. So you would have like a 5-card game, and every character has so many cards that they come with. So I just said a 5-card game randomly, but the way that it balances, like those monsters we were looking at, you would have a card for the rider and a card for the monster, and that's how those powerful characters are balanced with everybody else. Ludus Magnus is basically what you expect it to be with a name like that. If you have a look at the starter set, it should make a lot of sense. It's very much exactly what you think of when you think of gladiators. I mean, the only thing that guy is missing is a lion helmet. He'd be straight out of Gladiator. Legio 8 is kind of the same sort of idea. It's just very clearly a different faction. Ludus Britannicus, Gallo-Roman Imperial Gladitorial School. So they're all based into schools, basically. Miraturi is, from memory, yes, this is your Egyptian faction. And the one that I continue to be very tempted to buy. I love the big guy in the back with his giant double axe. I don't remember what that weapon is called. It's an Egyptian blade, but it's really fun. Does it tell me what it's called? I don't think it does. If you know what that type of weapon is called, let me know. Zafiri, from memory, is your... Yeah, Zafiri is your Viking type guys. Not that I know that Vikings were ever involved in Gladiatorial, but this is very much a fictionalized version, although what we know of from the Gladiatorial is mostly fiction anyway. It was kind of more like pro wrestling than it was like a real death fight.
Except people did die.
Yeah, but very, very rarely. They weren't actually allowed to kill each other. And then I'm going to skip a couple. I'm going straight down to the Gorgons, because this is another one I've been very, very tempted by. There's only 3 minis in this one at this stage, and there's no actual set, but you'll notice that each of these has 2 cards because they're each powerful characters. So I've opened up Medusa because I feel like it's a good place to start. The sculpting in these minis is just absolutely phenomenal. Medusa is kind of sculpted in the way that you would expect her to be sculpted, because Medusa is very much supposed to be a sexualized character. I'm not going to bring up Eurali in a larger form for the same reason, but this is literally what you think of when you think of giant snake monster. It's the very pretty woman, probably hiding behind a pole so that you don't see the giant snake thing and then realize that it's a monster that's going to kill you. The interesting part of this is that we also have Ztheno, which to me looks
That's
like
Shiva.
it looks like one of the gods from Indy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's totally a Shiva.
Yeah. So I don't actually get how that fits with the Gorgons. There might be a reason why it does. It just kind of feels a little out of place for me. There might be context for it. I don't know what that context is. But yeah, this is why I'm looking at Arena Rex. It's absolutely beautiful. In Beasts, you get all of the things that you were just looking at earlier with your monsters. There's somebody riding a giant horse, which is Dextarius, riding Irwain. Very much like the one you were talking about earlier with the bull, but this is a horse that's rearing up. It's all action. I do prefer the bull between the two. There's Anum, which is a guy with a hyena. This guy, he is one of the Egypt minis. This guy is like a beast master, and his whole thing is that he like helps the beasts basically become usable in the game. The example they give there in the artwork is him with the hyena.
Go to I'm gonna butcher this. Kawata riding Hiroka. That is totally a North American native influence design there.
Oh, here we go. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh! Yes, you're right. Very scarred up looking horse. That horse has not been treated well. Oh wait, is it actually scarring or is it maybe it's pain?
No, there's some scarring on it for sure. If you look at the face,
Yeah.
I think it was the face where I saw it. No, there's some scars on it for sure.
It's either scars or it's meant to be war paint. I'm not 100% sure. It might actually be war paint, come to think of it.
You look at one of the side pictures, it almost looks like it's war paint.
No, yeah. So the right side of its face, that one's scarring.
No, there's definitely scarring there. Yeah, if you look at the side on picture, you can see it going down the neck. Yeah. I mean, it's in a gladiatorial ring. You're not going to expect these beasts to be treated that well. Fictionalized or not, like, generally speaking, they weren't treated well, the creatures. I really, really like. He also doesn't look like he's been fed very well either. Very thin. As opposed to Irwain, which is Dextarius riding Irwain. That's a warhorse in comparison.
Right. It has its barding. It's got good muscle tone and structure, and yeah.
Last two I'm going to look at. The only one I haven't looked at this stage is the unaligned stuff. But I'm going to open up Leo because Leo is a very, very pretty lion. I really, really like this lion. It's sculpted. Like, the sculpturing in this is absolutely phenomenal. You could have a field day painting this stuff. And the last one I want to look at, like, there's more that I could look at here, but the last one I want to look at is Aatrox, because I don't think I've ever seen a better looking tiger, sculpture-wise.
You want to talk about good looking? You should go look at Carasus, the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crassus.
Yeah. Another one that's been very scarred up. Now, is that a regular bear or is it a short-nosed bear?
It's a bear with a rather large mouth. That's
yeah.
I'm just gonna leave it at that because if you look at that front view, that maw is huge. The minis on this game look absolutely amazing. I would love to. I'm gonna have to go find a game of this being played on YouTube or something like that to check, because this looks absolutely stunning.
From everything that I understand, this is simple to pick up, hard to master, if that makes sense. So very much like
anything else,
Bushido, and it definitely does have a following. It's not the biggest game around there, but it definitely does have a following. There are groups on Facebook that talk about this regularly. I have been on the fence, very seriously considering buying some of this, at least for an unboxing, for a very long time. Socks, you were about to say something.
Levi from the Hot LZ days kickstarted this, backed it on Kickstarter, back when it first. So I think I've possibly played it with him, 5 years ago now?
Yep.
So when we brought it up, I was like, oh, I've heard of this one before. So yeah, this is...
Do you remember what you felt about the game? I mean, obviously it wasn't your main at the time, because your main at that stage was Drop Fleet.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a pretty cool concept of having 2 or 3 characters fighting inside this gladiator arena, trying to duke it out and survive while using your powers. I mean, but obviously they've expanded a lot more than what I played. I think it was like Ludus Maximus and maybe Helinki or Legio. I can't remember. I mean, like I said, it was 5 years ago now.
The Egyptians were there because the Scorpion was available in the Kickstarter, because that's how my friend got it. I don't think the Moturi or the Gorgons certainly weren't. But, yeah. Like I said, I've been very tempted by this for a long time. Shall we discuss some hobby?
Trim, glue, prime, paint.
What have you been up to, Socks?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because I had my family in town for an entire week, and then I had a week in between, and my in-laws are now in town, so life has been busy.
You haven't been here for a month. You should have had at least something done.
I know, right? That month has been filled with family being in town for a week and a half and a week off, and then a week and a half again. So it's been crazy. So I plan to, once my in-laws are out of town, have left next week to try and get back into some stuff. So I've got some Shadow Collective stuff to paint up. I've got my lats to finish up. So that's what's on the bench to be finished up as soon as life calms down.
George, given that this man is full of nothing but excuses and pretty poor ones, do you have things that you've been doing, or are you filled with excuses as well?
I've been doing so much, actually. I have, as you saw some photos in the last episode where I showed off my Dreadnought of, hey, I finally picked a color to go with and everything, right?
Yeah.
I now have the battleship in color, all 4 battle cruisers in color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cruisers in color. Both my motherships in color. 12 more cruisers in primer. 6 warp gates in primer. 5 warp gates and 12 corvettes ready for primer. Then all my frigates are currently in the process of being stripped to be primed.
Well, I'm kind of full of excuses as well, because I've only painted 2 things in the last fortnight, which I know is very disappointing. Actually, no, that's not entirely true. I painted 3 things. I painted 5 things in the last fortnight. But the other 3 things I'm not going to show off today.
So in the process of me doing this, I'm experimenting with like colors and stuff like that. And I sent you a photo that I got some black chrome.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was going to use the black chrome paint as the weapon metal for my Shaltari ships, and then use the regular chrome for other metal highlights, and then using enamel colors over that to change it up. So I still got the whole shiny thing, because that paint I'm using, it's quite a shiny metallic.
Do you know how you're doing your dots yet?
Yes, I'm going to do them the same way: red, orange, yellow, white.
Okay.
As a nice, like, color contrast to the blue purple. Make them really, stand out and pop. Give it as much depth as possible. So I had 2 mothership discs that I had used some primer on, and I think I've got them here within reach. And it says to airbrush the chrome on. And here is some, and I got some Vallejo gloss black, because the gloss lacquer primer I have was killing my brain cells way too quickly. So actually, I'm gonna do this. So this is with the Vallejo gloss black primer.
Nice.
So that's the chrome brushed on, and it's all reversed. So it was turning out all right, and I was getting excited. And then I did the black chrome. See the little spot right there?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, the chrome paints are lacquer based, so it's eating the acrylic primer off.
Oh, awesome.
So my idea for doing the metals is totally out the window. I'm gonna have to think of something else now, because if I use a lacquer base chrome or black chrome on that nice, pretty color shifting metallic, I'm gonna stab myself in the eyeballs, because yeah.
Why don't you just varnish them before you go to that next step?
I
know that's a
could.
step, but that would solve your problem, right?
It would add. So I was already looking at having to do like 2 steps. One, I was looking at having to do like more gloss black, because like the color shift paint, those chrome paints have to go onto a gloss black surface.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to varnish seal. I'd have to do the mask off or brush on the gloss black, and then if I'm masking off or whatnot, and brushing, then I can airbrush. But
just use a gloss varnish.
Right. But I still have to put gloss black down as the undercoat.
Yeah. So
I'd have to brush that on where I'm going to do the metals, or mask it off and airbrush that on the metals, and leave that mask, and then airbrush the chrome on, since that's for the best result. So what I'm most likely going to do is I'm going to look at my Vallejo metallics that I've got for the airbrush line that I could just brush on, and probably get not as good results as I was hoping for, but good enough.
My theory is that if you did a gloss varnish over the top of it, then your turbo dork would still work over the top of that, and that'll help protect the acrylic undercoat from the metal.
Well, no, the color shift I'm using on the you can't hear me. The one I'm using on the Shaltari is Vallejo.
Oh,
the turbo dork is for something else. So let me do this. Is what I was talking about with the it says airbrushing is the best result. So here's a sword.
Oh, hence the masking. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So good Lord, I can't operate it. There we go. So do you see how shiny that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord, I can't manipulate. There we go. That's better. So that's kind of what I was going for. And in order to get that, I would really have to airbrush it. So I was looking at having a mask and do all this other stuff. So I'm thinking I'm just going to cut a corner or two and just do a regular good metallic. And I've got that set of Vallejo metallic. So I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that on top of the color shift and stuff like that, and just throw down a little of the Vallejo gloss black, I can get a good enough result for that.
Yeah.
Because so this is what I learned. Don't mix lacquer paints with acrylic paints. Unless you're putting the acrylic on top of lacquer. Then you're fine.
Yeah. So, like I said, I have done a little bit more than I said I had initially. So the unboxed the Bushido models that I unboxed over the last couple of weeks are all painted up. I'm only showing these off very briefly because these will actually feature in a review coming up in the next couple of weeks. A couple of these minis were actually ones that I owned already and bought second copies of. This one in particular being one of them. And basically what I've done is I bent an arm to help differentiate the two, because his sword was normally down here, so I've just bent the metal model up to help differentiate the two, so they're not the same. Unfortunately, I can't really do that with this one, because that sword is connected to literally everything all the way through, so I'm just going to be painted differently, and that'll be fine. But in the last, so most of those were done like the day after we had spoken last. Since then, I've only painted 2 things. And I know that's very disappointing after I sat here and picked on socks, but this is one of them. Really, really happy with how this turned out.
Oh, that's a lot bigger than what I was thinking it was.
Well, they are 40... Is it 40 mil? 35 mil. I think it's a 35 mil scale. So they are slightly bigger than your regular 28 mil type stuff, like significantly. But I'm not as proud of that as I am of the other one. And I know that you two have already seen this, but I haven't been as proud of my painting as I am of this in a very long time. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's like award-winning material or anything. I wasn't aiming for that. This is tabletop by design. But I spent the better part of 2 days working on this. I mean, this is a really, really big mini. The only thing I'm missing at this stage is the character that goes on top, and it will either, and it's one of 2. This is the one that comes with the kit, with his giant spear. The other one is the Queen, which is the one that I will be using.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really happy with how that's turned out. This will also feature in a video that's coming up shortly, because this is kind of making a point about the product that I'll be talking about in that video. Our Patreon guys should have a pretty good idea of what this review is going towards, because I have been telling them that it's been coming for many months now. I did say initially when I unboxed the product that I would be doing a review on it long term, so I'll be coming back to that probably within the next 2 weeks. It's going to be filmed this week, but it probably won't go live until the week after. So yeah, I've been actually pretty productive, honestly. Which is why I'm so disappointed with Socks, because he's done nothing. He's lazy.
Done nothing. I truly feel bad. I feel like I've done nothing the last month and a half. But
What's so important about family?
Nothing.
Well, Hurricane Ian screwed up a good couple of weeks of that because we were trying to.
You had a little
now
storm.
You're blaming the weather.
You
blaming the weather now.
You had a little storm. Oh, I mean, it's not like they made you leave your house or anything. Oh, wait.
I did.
Alrighty. Should we talk about some game talk? Kind of talk.
Yeah.
Talk nerdy to me.
So, last fortnight, George and I had a little bit of a talk about shiny syndrome because Socks wasn't here. And I had raised this subject idea, and I was like, no, I think I'd prefer to talk about this while we were all here. Very, very quickly, Socks. Like, shiny syndrome, like, obviously, you know what that's like. Out of the 3 of us, you're probably the best when it comes to avoiding it.
My wife would say otherwise.
You don't buy anywhere near as much shiny stuff as we do.
Hey, the next time she gives you a crap, just do a messenger call with me, and I'll show her what a real problem is.
I don't think that actually would help, to be fair.
Well, no, it would, because then she'd realize, oh, he actually isn't that bad.
Did you have any other than like blaming the wife for having problems with it? Do you have any other opinions on like shiny syndrome before I move on to what today's topic actually is?
No, it's definitely very real. I mean, I'll see something. So I can point to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 games just in here but I saw
Oh,
on the shelf
wow.
once. Saw on the shelf once. Went back to look on YouTube of how to play it, and the next week I had it in my game shelf. So
Yeah, I'm not answering that.
just
I'm not
here in
answering that
my little
question.
room. What's
I'm
that?
not answering that question.
But you talk about the other family games that we have out there, the 4 or 5 bookshelves of family games. Yeah, most of those are just, ooh, I want that.
Yeah. So, the thing that I wanted to raise and talk about today has nothing to do with Shiny Syndrome. It's more a result of playing multiple games. So sometimes you'll come across a game and there's mechanics in it that sound really, really exciting or sound really, really dull. And either they turn out to be much more fun than you expected them to be, or it really doesn't work the same way that you want it to. I'm going to start with an example, and I know that George had one that I don't know if he remembers it or not. He might have forgotten it. But
yeah, I'm gonna have to scroll back through.
yeah. So when I very first played the original Batman game, well, it's still out there, but the Batman miniatures game, when I first played it, one of the first things that I got really excited for is, oh, this is in metric. Oh, that's going to be so much easier. Because I don't have to work with converting anything anymore. But you don't have to convert anything in a miniatures game anyway, because you just measure whatever it is and then you do it. But I really ended up hating that mechanic very quickly because centimeters is so much smaller, and it always meant that I was overestimating what I was going to be able to do in a turn. Because I was so used to playing in inches, I was like, oh, well, I should be able to get up there. I've got like 4, so that's plenty of distance, but 4 is only
Not 2 inches.
that big,
Nope,
not that
quite.
big. So, I mean, that's a very simple concept of what I do have a couple more, and I will come back to. I was thinking we'd just do a bit of a roundtable talking about it, just because everything in miniatures has been done before, and this does kind of come into the secret project a little bit, like for some of the reasons why I've chosen to do certain things in a certain way, or why I might be worried that things may not be as fun as I hope they might be. That's what playtesting is for. George, do you remember what your original thought was?
Yeah, I remember I said I could probably come up with something.
When we spoke last week, the last fortnight, you were like, oh, but I had something all prepared. And you don't remember what that is?
No, because I had that in my mind. When I replied to your message on the messenger was, yeah, I could probably come up with something. I came up with something. I didn't write it down.
Good job, George.
Socks. Any particular subjects, like mechanics-wise, that you can think of, or features of a game that you either thought was going to be good or wasn't, or the other way around?
So I started playing, the first miniatures game I got into was Flames of War, which I really enjoyed as a historical gamer. That's how I started playing historical games. I loved it because of the World War II aspects of the game, that I loved the history of World War II.
Yep.
However, and I know Warhammer is the same way with this mechanic that I'm about to describe. Since playing other games, I don't think I'll ever go back to this mechanic. And Bruce knows exactly what mechanic
I know exactly where you're going with this.
I play everything and activate, and then you play everything and activate, and vice versa. I absolutely hate those type of games these days.
It just feels so tedious.
Yeah, they are. Because when I would play Flames of War, I would sometimes lose an entire company of infantry or a platoon of infantry or whatnot, or 3 out of my 5 tanks. And I'd be like, well, this is going to be fun now because I've got way less shots coming at you now than what you had at me, and so on.
And therefore you can't recover. You can't recover from a turn like that.
Exactly. And so,
I mean, you can, but it's very hard to.
Very, very hard. You've got to have the dice rolls to act on your behalf. So that's kind of why I delved into bolt action, because I love that mechanic of I'm going to get a dice for every unit in my army. You're going to get a dice for every unit in your army. And we're going to put everything in the bag, and then we're going to draw one randomly.
Yeah.
And it can be my dice. I could get 3 or 4 strings of dice, or you could get 3 or 4 strings of dice or whatnot. So that kind of mechanic was cool. But I love Drop Fleet. where you build your strat ratings on your cards, and we put them down in the order that you want, and we flip them over. Okay, I've got a better strat rating, and then
Yeah.
I can decide whether you go first or I go first.
Yeah.
And so I love that alternate interaction between games. Like I said, I will probably never go back to I go everything, you go everything type of a game anymore, just because I can't stand those games anymore.
The only exception to that I can think of, well, no, there's a few exceptions, but the biggest one that comes out in my head is Infinity has it where it's all me and then all you. But because they have that reacting mechanic, it feels so different because you're you're not just sitting back and then waiting forever for your turn to happen. You always have a chance to actually respond, and you're always involved in the game. So that definitely helps.
When I was more active in 40K and stuff like that, and this was after Drop Fleet, I was actually toying with the idea of trying to sit down with someone and playing a game where, you know, you have your units, you know, with your command point structure and everything, like they're worth so many power points, and you go based off, like, you stack them in that order, like, I want to move this unit, you know, and it's based off the, you know, which one is, you know, worth the most power points, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And it's an alternating, you know, turn instead of like you go, I go. I agree that you go, I go is the absolute worst.
I understand why it happens, because if you have a mass army game where it's back and forth, that can potentially take a very long time. So, I mean, to some extent, it's kind of part of the course, but yeah.
I'm going to disagree with that because, I mean, if you look at Drop Fleet, you know, you do your activations. I mean, you can the only part of the game that took up so much time and just sucked the game down to a snail's pace was ground combat.
In the case of big army games, Lord of the Rings actually plays back and forth. And the episode of Beasts of War that I appeared on, their weekender, the XLBS, Ben from their team had been working on implementing the Lord of the Rings mechanics into Warhammer 40k to see if it actually works. And it works really, really well. It's probably the smartest way of doing that back and forth in Warhammer that I've ever seen. I wouldn't be able to... But basically, it's like it's back and forth, but within that back and forth, you still have the turn order. So you still have your psychic and then your move and then your thing. So that it's not... Because the problem because you have all of those different phases in 40k, if you go back and forth, it doesn't always really work. But they broke it down so that every alternate activation does that. So I move, then you move, you shoot, then I shoot, so on and so forth. And then we go on to the next one. So
yeah,
on paper, it sounds really well, really, really good. George, any other thoughts that come to mind before I go into another one of mine?
No, I for the life of me, I can't think of a game mechanic that I truly come across as like a dislike.
Well, it can be the other way around.
Yeah.
My next one is going to be something I didn't think I would like, and I do.
I will say, you know, since I have a lot of them, as far as like, you know, cooperative, you know, like the game is AI controlled.
Yeah.
I've really come across some really good, like, the game is really smart AIs. Like the most recent one, the Scooby-Doo game, Sam and I sat down, played it, and like, you know, it's a board, it doesn't change, and there's blue arrows that, you know, follow a path, there's green arrows that follow a path, and there's red arrows that follow a path. And there's some lines where it's like, you can't go through this way. But with the monster, there's a deck, you flip it over, and it has a number and a color. Guess what? The number is how many spaces it moves. The color is which arrow path it follows.
And I'm guessing it could either go this way on the path or that way on the path.
Yeah, the path is determined by the color of the arrows.
Yeah.
So it's like there's 1 and 3, you know, like which path is it going to follow? Then how many numbers is determined by the number on the card, and it's so simplistic that it's just it's super easy to pick up and follow, and then it's just like it's mind blowing. Like, wow.
It's super simplistic in a way where you feel like it's too simple and it's not going to work, but clearly it does. So I could see why you're bringing that up. That works. Malifaux today, I mean, it's no secret that Malifaux is my favorite game. Like, I have loved Malifaux for a long time. When I first had that game described to me, my head was like, I don't get it. How can you have a game without dice? I don't see how this works. You have a deck of cards and you're pulling out the deck. It's like, yeah, but how do I know if I'm successful or not? Like, the deck mechanic, until I used it, made no sense to me. It just seemed really, really dumb.
Yeah.
And this is as someone that already, like, I was already experiencing the problems with dice at this stage. I didn't know that there was alternate options available. Like, Malifaux is not the first people to use cards instead of dice. I think it's probably the best version of using them. But then I actually sat down and I had a demo game with Alan back in the day, and it just made so much sense. But that's not the biggest thing that really worked for me. They have this cheating mechanic where you have so many cards in your hand, and like your hand is hidden from your opponent. So if you draw something that's bad, you have the opportunity to take something from your hand and replace it. This may unlock an extra ability that you have. It may help you succeed where you would have failed before. It makes it feel like you're cheating, which is why they call it that, even though it's actually part of the game mechanic. Now, and I could cheat in a different card, and then you could cheat in a different card, and I could have wasted the card, basically. On paper, reading it, it made no sense to me at all, but it works so good in real life. Malifaux still remains my favourite game mechanics-wise, and it's by a pretty big margin.
I mean, there's something to be said about a game where, you have combat and, you're fighting against an opponent and you're not using dice rolls as like part of the,
Moonstone works the same way.
Yeah, Ankh is like that too. The game I sat down and played with my buddies, one of them described it as a chess, but with more than 2 players and way more variables, because there were no dice. It was based on how you move stuff, where you used activations on the tracker, and yeah, it was really interesting that you could play that game because it doesn't use dice, Bruce.
Yeah, true. The other one that comes to mind, I've never played it, but Woolsong uses a standard deck, actually. Or it did use a standard deck. I don't know if Woolsong still exists, honestly. But yeah, that's probably the big one. You, Socks, mentioned one a minute ago that I've never tried, but I've always been curious to, which is the dice bag. I mean, Batman does that to some extent. It doesn't quite work the same way. Well, it used to do that to some extent. I don't know if it still does, actually. But I've always been curious to try that again, because on paper, that's it. Kind of, in my head at least, it kind of feels like it makes more sense on paper than it might do in real life. But I haven't really had much experience with it, so I can't say for sure. Because on paper, it balances out, because if you get a whole heap of things in a row, eventually that's going to mean that I get all of my stuff in a row.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you take those things out I haven't activated, then, because I understand that you can still only activate one thing at a time.
Correct.
So there's there is issues on that side of it as well.
There is a little bit, but with how it was explained with bolt action is kind of you're able. It's almost like Affinity too at the same time. Is you're able to react to something that's coming at you.
True, that's a good point.
Because you can some of the orders that you can do when you get a dice and you activate a unit is you can put them in a sense Overwatch, where if something comes in their way, then they can shoot at it or something like that, and so you can react still a little bit by some of the orders that you're able to put down with bolt action. Another mechanic that I just thought of is I have a board game called U-Boot, which is where it's a cooperative game where you are a submarine command crew. Up to 4 players.
Shouldn't that be
so you got
U-Boat
one
then?
player. What's that?
Shouldn't it be U-Boat? Not
It's
U-Boot.
No, it was made in Canada, so it's U-Boot.
That's right. So one player is the captain, one player is the engineer, one player is the first officer, and another player is the navigator. But you can, if you have only 2 players, you can actually play solitaire as well. But you're playing all 4 roles in a sense by yourself, and it's very hard. But the mechanic that they have that's in the game is they have a app that's used as the computer system.
Yeah.
So the storyline from the game plays out through the app, but then you have all your game mechanics and components that you have to react to whatever is coming up in the app at the same time. And they've built it in just like in a normal submarine crew, where if they need to go into silent running, you can have the option to have the microphone on your tablet or your phone pick up the voices of the table around you as well. And so if you're being hunted by a destroyer, for example, it could pick up your sounds, and then the destroyer would be able to find you a little bit easier than if you were to all just be silent and let the destroyer pass its way on by. So it's a pretty cool mechanic of having a device help control the game as you play through it as well.
That brings up an idea for one that I've.
That's really neat.
Yeah,
that's really neat. Cool.
Do you have anything before I go, George?
No, go for it.
I have one more that comes to mind. So, apps is a thing that kind of people tend to think of one of 2 ways at this stage. Because the fear with app is always that, well, if the company decides that they're not going to support it anymore, then the game doesn't work without the app. And that is genuinely a problem. Because very few of these games, I mean, some of them can work without the app, but very few of them can. Because they work the app in so heavily so that you really have to rely on it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a wonderful use of technology to make something different. But I completely understand where people are coming from. But it reminds me very heavily of something. So back in 1991, and this game is something that got relaunched somewhat recently, there was this little game called Nightmare that comes on a VHS. And you had to react to what the game master was doing on the VHS. On paper, this was amazing. Well, even in real life, it's amazing. But there's a big problem with it. The problem with it is that once you've played it once, basically it does the same thing all the time. So it's a game that become repetitive very quickly. Now, they did eventually release different VHSs and stuff, but on paper, this was something that really worked, and it does work, maybe the first time you've played it, but it starts to fail pretty quickly after that. Now, don't get me wrong, Nightmare was fun. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but long-term, Nightmare was a game that didn't work.
You'd have to have a completely new group of friends to play it, and you would be the one that would be like, okay, I've done this for the 5th time now with a new group of friends.
You get to predict it.
Yeah.
It becomes a big problem. And there was a whole series of them as well. Like, people tried to do it with DVDs so that it come up randomly and stuff. And like, there was a version of Cluedo that did that actually, from memory, worked really well. But I only played it the once, so I don't know if it became repetitive or not. That's kind of where I feel apps can help a little bit with this style of game, because you can genuinely work in different updates and stuff, and you can update them with new video footage and stuff very easily. You don't even have to do video footage. I mean, you could have it so that it's text-based, so that you don't have to pay actors and stuff to update it all the time. That's definitely a benefit of the app side of things, but it still leaves the same problem of if they ever decide that they're not going to update it, or if it's a game that only makes... Because at the end of the day, every game has a lifespan. I mean, Monopoly's lifespan ran out in the 60s. For some reason, they're still releasing it. Wait, when was Monopoly out? But if a game, like if Cthulhu Death May Die had an app and you had to use the app for the game, I don't know if it does or not.
No, it does not.
If that game got to a point where there wasn't much to release for it, they're not going to continue paying the license for that app to continue being on the store and being supported. Doesn't necessarily mean the app stops working. It depends on how the app works. Because if everything's stored on your phone, it becomes a non-issue. But if it's something that relies on a server that's then eventually taken down because they cost money, that's where you have your problem. Most of these rely on servers. Sorry?
1933.
Oh, so it was over in the 1940s then. Okay.
It was pre-war. Is when, it was
Depression was going on.
Yeah, I just picked 1960 randomly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw hate at Monopoly because it's very easy.
I did. Actually, while I was sitting here, I did think of a game mechanic that I thought was fairly terrible. It was clunky. It worked, but it was really hard to initially get a grasp of. And I'm really going to date myself here when I talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Thaco.
I've never played Thaco. I know what it is, but I've never played it.
No. Thaco in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Thaco is an acronym to hit armor class 0. Because in theory, 0 is the ultimate best you could hit for armor. You couldn't get any better. So like in 3rd edition where they went the opposite direction where you could have an armor of 15 or 20 or 30 or 37 or whatever, your armor just keeps getting higher and higher and your hit keeps getting higher and higher. In Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, your armor went negative. The lower your number, the better. And you had what was called Thaco to hit armor class 0.
I'd forgotten about this.
And yeah, so the better your Thaco got, like you wanted your Thaco number to be low too. So if you had a Thaco of 20, well, you're never going to hit an armor class 0. If you had a Thaco of 5, you're going to hit armor class 0.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of trying to learn that and explain that to a new player was the absolute hardest because everything else is you want a bigger number, you want a higher number. Except for this, you need it to be lower.
Yeah, it was the only thing in the game that worked that way. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. And so, and like, that's why you see in previous editions, everything kept getting higher is because it made more sense to do that. It was only in that where it's like, it took me probably 6 months. And this is when I was in comm school. So we were playing Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night because we were in the middle of the desert with nothing to do except play D&D 3 nights a week for 6 months before I was finally able to understand and calculate my own Thaco.
Gee, I wonder why Advanced Dungeons and Dragons only had a short lifespan. Oh, actually, it wasn't that short a lifespan, though, come to think of it.
It wasn't, and there are still purists who argue that it's still the best edition.
That's one.
I don't hate Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but
no, and I partially agree with, I think it is definitely a really solid release because it one said, well, that's up to DM discretion, and we're only going to focus on these things. And now you've got, what are they on now? 5th edition, where it's just like,
we're on the verge of 6 now.
Oh, jeez. So, yeah. So that I don't know why it took me so long to think of that, but yeah, Thaco was one of those things where it's like, no. Like once you figured it out and you could use it, it was great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But getting to that point was such a struggle.
Yeah, because it goes against everything else in the game. Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from with that. Yeah, definitely. So there we go. That was our thought process. Let us know in the comments. Like, is there things that you came across that thought made a lot of sense and it just didn't seem to communicate as well? Or is there things that other players have enjoyed that you really never did? I can't think of an example of that right now, but there's definitely games that I've played where I really didn't enjoy them and everybody else did. So let us know in the comments. Next fortnight, I want to return back to Drop Zone Commander because it's been a few episodes since we've touched on it at this point. And I want to go through and do another basic discussion on each army and how they work, starting with the Resistance. That's the plan. And we're going to go through all five. We're going to go through all 5 factions over 5 episodes, and then we're going to move on to something else. The reason that we have stopped covering them every episode is because, despite voices asking for stuff, people haven't been paying that much attention to it, and that's become more and more evident over several conversations we've had now. So we stopped covering Drop Zone so frequently, and I started going in other directions because I felt like the show was suffering for us trying to do something that nobody really gave us any appreciation for. So for those that were really wanting constant Drop Zone coverage from a meta point of view, I do apologize because I know that there are some of you out there, but I think the show over the last 3 or 4 episodes speaks for itself. I think it's been a better product. So we are going to continue with these subject matters, but we're going to break them up, and I'm going to try and cover more than just the 1 game or 2 games. I want us to maybe go into a little bit of Legion. I'd like us to go into a little bit of X-Wing, maybe a little bit of MCP, like just touching on certain games here and there and talking about them. But for now...
Tournaments, demos, conventions, that kind of stuff.
First things first, the Drop Zone Commander community has the terrain competition going. This has been going on for a few weeks at this stage. If you want to enter, you need to enter this before the 1st of December. There will be a link that, because I haven't been sharing the link, I will actually share the link in the comments, in the show notes this time. Because you need to reply to that thread in the Drop Zone Commander community to enter before the 1st of December. And your terrain needs to be a fully painted piece of terrain, whether it's homemade, MDF, so on and so forth, with rules for that said terrain piece by the end of the year. That is how this is working. There are prizes available. There's secret prizes being offered by TT Combat. Secret to the point where they don't even tell Michelle what they're going to be. This has been a theme for most of their competitions now for a while. Blots have vouchers. There's a £40, there's a £25, and there's a £15 from 1 to 3rd place. Uncertain Scenery have 20% off vouchers for 1st and 10% vouchers for 2 to 3. Sorry, for 2nd and 3rd place. And Green Stuff World have a 10% code for everybody who enters. Keeping in mind that means that you need to finish your entry to qualify for that. So, get on board with that. It's a different competition. Rather, it's not overly difficult. It's just obviously trying to figure out what you want to do. Pick something that doesn't exist in the game already, or something that you feel could add to the game, and then just have fun with it. I mean, there's people that's been entering what looks like spaceships, and there's a few other things. Also, where am I? Clash of Kings 23 is coming up on the 19th of November. This is a Kings of War tournament happening at Games Portal in Ringwood, Victoria, Australia. There is a Conquest tournament happening in the United States. So this is happening at Griffin's Lair Game Shop in, what's PA? Pennsylvania? Yep, thank you. I was right. Yay. It is either going to be a 1,750 point tournament or a 2,000 point tournament. That decision will be made on the day. For those of you that are really confused right now, it's done this way on purpose. It's basically the idea, and I actually really like this idea, is to keep people on their toes. So basically you need to prepare 2 lists, and you don't know which one you're going to use until the day. I actually really like this idea. I've never seen it done before.
Yeah. It is a cool concept.
All players can submit their lists to rztalons@gmail.com. Otherwise, join the Conquest First Argument group on Facebook, and you can find it under their events. PAX Unplugged is coming December 2nd till 4th. That's coming really quickly at this point. And on December the 4th, in Leaders Games in Leeds, UK, there's a Moonstone event, Miracle on Tumbledown Street. 3 rounds, 10 o'clock start. All of that is coming up and more. If you have events that you want us to talk about, let us know. You can get in contact us at gettingtabled@gmail.com and we will cover your event. Just obviously, because we only record fortnightly, don't email us with something that's happening the following week. Maybe try to give us a couple of weeks advance notice so that we can talk about it in advance. We do have listeners everywhere. Like, a huge percentage of them are in the US, but like we do have listeners in Australia and the UK and randomly in Asia, which I find interesting. I mean, I want more listeners, obviously, all the time, but we don't have personal connections in those areas, which the United States makes sense because you guys are both there. I'm in Australia. It kind of makes sense. UK, obviously,
is where all the games are from. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember we had a couple of guys from Huddle Z that followed us that were in the Southeast Asia area, so they
probably carried over from that. Yeah. We have a competition going on. I mentioned it earlier. We've got a Drop Fleet Commander Shaltari fleet that's being given away. If you support us on Patreon, it's $2 a month. Every month the support you give us between now and April enters you into the competition, and that will be getting sent out to a supporter of the Patreon. It's all been purchased by me. It's all being given out by me. You need to live in a country where it's legal to receive a prize and is not illegal for me to ship it to you. That's the only conditions. Get in on it. Try to give us support. It's not expensive. Just help us continue in the product and improve ourselves all the time. Facebook.com/gettingtabled. YouTube.com/gettingtabled. Instagram is @gettingtabled. Twitter as well. And gettingtabled.weebly.com. Otherwise, I do have a Twitch. I will not be on Twitch this week, so we will talk about that another time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For listening to Getting Tabled. Music used in this podcast was created by Eric Matyas at soundimage.org.